G'day, my name's Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Box Office Charts. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Let's dive in. We've got some exciting numbers to talk about this week. First up, Avatar, Fire and Ash. Avatar 3 opens to $11.1 million, taking top spot, well expected, but not as high as we were hoping for. But we never write off Avatar movies in their first week. Opening to over $10 million in Australia is equivalent to opening over $100 million in the US. But Avatars are long-term movies. We never write them off after 1 week, after 2 weeks. We wait and see, and we check in on them in January and see how they're still going. So opening to $11.1 million, that is the third highest opening of the year, and we'll check the top 5 openings. But Zootopia 2 at number 2, also holding really well, bringing in another $2.6 million in its fourth week of release, dropping just 24% for a current total of $22.3 million. Wicked for Good, on the other hand, continues to kind of plummet down the charts with another $874,000 in its fifth week of release, dropping another 46% for a current total, though, of $29.1 million. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, unfortunately, in the same boat as Wicked for Good, bringing another $760,000 in its third week of release, dropping another 57% for a current total of $8.1 million. And Duranda holds in the top 5 for a third week in a row. This is very, very unexpected for an Indian film. They normally come in, open good, and then drop off 80 to 90% in week 2, dropping 43% in its third week of release for a current total of $3.7 million. That's a really good number for an Indian film in the Australian market. Really, really good. It brought in another $720,000 this weekend. Moving on to 6 through 10. At number 6, we have Nuremberg dropping down to number 6 with $340,000 in its third week of release, dropping 44% for a current total of $2.4 million. At 7 and 8, we have a couple of re-releases, Christmas-themed re-releases that snuck their way onto the chart, with Home Alone from 1990 bringing in $129,000 and Love Actually bringing in $121,000. So that's a little bit of a surprising gem, but these re-releases around Christmas time, they get a lot of drive-thrus and big public displays, so that's how they come into the chart. At number 9, we have Eternity with another $114,000, its third week in release, dropping 56% for a current total of just over $1.1 million. And rounding out the top 10, we have Pets on a Train with just over $100,000, its second week in release, dropping just 15%, which is a pretty good hold, but it isn't a huge number, for a current total of just under $400,000. Alright, so before we dive in deep with Avatar, let's take an updated look at the top 5 openings of 2025, which Avatar Fire and Ash has snagged third spot, pushing Lilo and Stitch down to number 4 with its $9.2 million opening. Jurassic World Rebirth goes down to number 5 with its just over $9 million, and Superman is out of the top 5 openings of 2025. Avatar with its $11.1 million, with Wicked for Good still holding second highest opening of the year with its $11.6 million opening. And a Minecraft movie still holds strongly, comfortably, the top spot with its $13.6 million opening. That will be the highest opening movie of the year. Ain't nothing coming out in the next 2 weeks that's going to throw it off, so that is the highest opening movie of the year. But let's dive more into Avatar. So Avatar, let's have a look here. Avatar original, 2009, opened at the Australian domestic box office to $11.9 million. That was back in 2009. In 2022, Avatar The Way of Water opened to $14.7 million, so that's good. But Avatar Fire and Ash has opened to $11.1 million. Now, this looks okay. And again, we never judge avatars by their first week or their first couple of weeks. But let's adjust these for inflation. And when you adjust for inflation, 2009 to 2022 to 2025 shows a little bit more of waning interest. That said, all 3 have opened to more than $10 million in Australia. I'm very, very curious, and we will be watching all 3 of these movies week by week as they move forward, so we can see how they hold up respective to one another over their second, third, fourth, fifth week, and so on. Like we're doing with Wicked, which let's take an updated look at Wicked right now. So this is Wicked versus Wicked for Good after 5 weeks of release. And that green line is Wicked for Good, and it opens ahead of the pink line, which is Wicked, but it fell off the pace around week 3, and it's been falling further and further off the pace of Wicked every week moving forward. So this is not a good sign for Wicked for Good, but still a smash hit. Like any movie that brings in like $29 million, and it's going to get over $35 million by the end of its run, but it's not going to get the $48 million that the first Wicked was on the trajectory to get at this point in time. But still both smash hits. So quick update to the 2025 top 10 of the Australian box office. So the box office of everything released in calendar year 2025. We do it a little bit different to Screen Australia, where they measure revenue brought in per calendar year. So in Screen Australia's records, in 2009, Avatar is like number 5 or number 3 or something. And then in 2010, it's the number 1 movie. For the sake of our charts, Avatar 3 will be on this chart, but it will not be on a 2026 chart because it's a 2025 release. So the new entry this week at number 9 is Zootopia 2, making its way onto the chart with its $22.3 million, which pushes down Fantastic Four: A First Steps with its just over $18 million, knocking out Paddington in Peru, which has been here since January 1st. Poor Paddington in Peru finally knocked out just before the end of the year. Wicked for Good stays at number 6 with its $29.1 million, very closing the gap on F1 the movie and How to Train Your Dragon, so it's going to try and grab those. Can it take Jurassic World Rebirth? We'll have to wait and see. But this is the top 10 for the 2025 as it stands. We'll see Avatar on this chart probably next week. So we'll see how we go. Alright, let's take a look at what's upcoming this Christmas Boxing Day weekend. For the holidays, first up we have Sentimental Value. This Norwegian drama is a big awards contender for the year and finally releases in Australia. Directed by Joachim Trier and starring Renate Renisiv and Stellan Skarsgård. Next up, we have Anaconda. This one I have zero interest in, but it's a legacy sequel slash reboot slash meta reboot of the 1997 original, directed by Tom Gormican and starring Paul Rudd, Jack Black, and Daniela McCullough. Next, we have Rental Family. This one I am keen on. It's a new comedy drama directed by Hikari, starring Brendan Fraser, Takehiro Hira, and Mari Yamamoto. We also have The Housemaid, a new thriller directed by Paul Feig, starring Sydney Sweeney, Amanda Seyfried, and Brandon Skelenar. We also have SpongeBob the Movie, The Search for SquarePants, the latest family comedy from SpongeBob, directed by Derek Drymon and starring all the usual voices. And in limited release, so check your local and indie cinemas, we have Rushnabar. This one I swear had already released, but maybe it was pulled last minute, as that's quite common with Indian films in Australia. But this one is a Malayalam language action movie out of India, directed by Nanda Kishore. Moving on across to streaming, we have Goodbye June, a new Kate Winslet directed movie, also starring Kate Winslet alongside Toni Collette and Andrea Riseborough. And this new drama can be found on Netflix on December 24th. We also have The Copenhagen Test, a new spy thriller from creator Thomas Brandon, starring Simu Liu and Melissa Barrera, and you can catch this one on Binge in Australia on 27th of December. In returning series, we have Sanctuary: A Witch's Tale, returning for its second season on AMC Plus on December 25th, and Stranger Things returns for its season 5 part 2 on Netflix on December 25th. Its part 3 is, I think, on New Year's Day. So only 3 movies watched for this week's challenge, as it's an always fun but very tricky one of watching a movie not watched by anyone during any challenge for the entire year. But let's dive into what I did watch. First up was Happy End from 2025, directed by Neo Sora and starring Hayato Kurihara, Yukito Hideka, and Yuta Hayashi, giving us a light sci-fi dystopian onset from the perspective of kids at a school that is increasing monitoring and surveillance, but with other elements going on in the background. I like this one. Great music score, an interesting movie setting, and setting it in the perspective of the younger generation that care less about the big picture, but do care when issues impact them and how much a larger plan plays out. Solid 2025 feature. Next up was the big one I got to see before any other challenges thanks to the Australian time zones, with Avatar Fire and Ash, directed by James Cameron and starring all the same faces and names from the previous movies. Not too much to say about this one, it's more Avatar. Granted, maybe too much more Avatar, with at least 20 to 30 minutes that could have come off this monster runtime of like 3 hours, 20 minutes. I love the new bad girl and some great action set pieces, as well as continuing to be the only movie worth seeing in 3D ever, but it's more Avatar. If you don't like the previous Avatars, you're not going to like this one. If you did, maybe you will. End of story. Finally was one that no one was really missing anything with The Family Plan 2, the 2025 sequel to the 2023 original, directed by Simon Cellan Jones and starring the same cast as the original with a few new faces. A very typical generic sequel of What If, the same premise but this time in Europe, that way too many I'm a secret agent or ex-assassin but now with a family movies go to for their sequels. I kid you not, look into that subgenre of movies and their sequels are always in Europe. That's the twist. But yeah, the first one was passable, and I think I gave it a Met rating of about 5 out of 10. This one, less so, as it didn't even have some of the fun tropes of the ex-assassin with family normally has, since in the sequel, there is no secret anymore. Nobody 2 was a much better example of this same movie. This week's Cinechums Movie Challenge, the final one of the year, is basically the reverse. Watch something that has been watched by any challenger, any challenge this week for this entire year. So anything on this list you can watch, or if you don't want to search them all, but let's have a look at my shortlist. I have a few like House of Dynamite, Life of Chuck, Superman, and K-Pop Demon Hunters as rewatches. Reflections of a Dead Diamond, Sister Midnight, Hurry Up Tomorrow, Baby Assassins, The Long Walk, a lot of 2025 catch-ups, so we'll see how we go. That is it for me this week. It is holiday time and I will be catching at least a couple of movies on Boxing Day. Probably Rental Family and Sentimental Value are my most anticipated. We'll see how we go. I've got a lot to catch up on from 2025 before I finalise all my best of the year list, my worst of the year list, best TV of the year list. But those lists will all come out in the new year, as it gives me a little bit of time to work on them and put them together. But that's it. Have a good one. Have a good holiday, Christmas break. And we will be back here next week seeing Avatar Weekend 2, along with SpongeBob and Sentimental Value and Rental Family. And we'll see how these box office releases go. But let's be honest, none of those should dethrone Avatar. Like, Avatar should be dominant for at least the next few weeks. But we'll see how we go anyway with that. Anyway, that's it for me. Have a good one. Watch more movies. Bye.